All right. Well, I think we're up and going. First, I'd like to welcome everybody back to, hold on. Yep. I welcome everybody back to Coach's Corner. We're experiencing some technical difficulties. I'm not usually, it's not the normal pretty face that's here, giving you the normal lowdown on how things work. But so we look forward to having everybody submit questions. Please just put them in the comments on Facebook, and we will grab them as we come. Anything that we can't answer, we will answer back on SCA Coaches Corner after we repost the link to the YouTube page that we put this on. Hopefully, maybe Vesper can fix her problem so that at the end she can kind of correct anything that I may have missed. But since we're here now, I'd like to introduce, we will be speaking with Duke Eikbrandr tonight. Best part is he's a very good friend in the Midrealm for me. Has been into society well longer than I have. Everyday practitioner of martial arts, not only in SCA but outside. So I think it's going to be a great interview. And then we have Duke Sean, Jarl Thorfinn, and Viscount Tristan with us tonight, which is great because both Thorfinn and Tristan have a lot in common with Eikbrandr, and so I'm looking forward to hearing everybody getting the chance to hang out and talk. So first piece, I'm going to see if Eikbrandr can get his video turned back on again. Oh, there he is. Much better. So, Ike, man, it's good to see you. What you been doing through all this COVID? Oh, is your mic on? Did we lose you?
No, I think my mic.
Oh no, you're back.
Okay, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not a tech guy, so I might make a lot of mistakes, but I have learned how to do videos over the pandemic and post to YouTube. So that's been a major plus for my ability to learn how to teach and to try to do it with videos instead of face to face or a little bit of the handwritten stuff that I've done over the years. So
yeah, that's a pretty big thing nowadays. I mean, Tristan, you're doing a lot of that on the martial arts side, haven't you?
Yeah, I started an online subscription program for my Aikido stuff about a year and a half ago. And I think I just uploaded my 150th video, 155th or something like that this week. So yeah, it's one of those kind of learn as you go and do the best you can. You learn a lot along the way, that's for sure.
One of the things I really enjoy is and always have is just teaching, period. And
absolutely.
the opportunity to figure out how to transmit that information across the known world has been really interesting for me, and I doubt truly that I'd have been motivated or found the time to do it without the pandemic. So from my viewpoint, I've continued to learn and to grow even when it had to be in the dojo and with the spirit senseis around me. So good stuff.
Yeah, I think that's I think for everybody, it's like we obviously we would have never, well, we were starting this channel before we probably got into COVID. And then everything just lined up and it was like, ooh, okay, well, now we got to get rolling. And since then we've learned just incredible amount of stuff, we've probably been doing 4 Zooms a week, myself, including Zooms with people that are just reviewing video and helping fighters. And, it sucks that we got to this place, but I think we've learned so much coming out of it. I mean, I know I've shot more video, and I've done a lot of video before, but I've shot more video than ever before. And actually been able to dive into stuff deeper now. Is that your experience too?
Yes, I believe so, but not necessarily transmitting the stuff, in regards to that on video. But the more you teach, the more I think about how to teach and try to understand how to do it verbally with pictures, in the written word, to all the different people that are out there that, in my experience over 35, 40 years of doing this, you know, everybody learns a little bit different. And, you know, this is a new opportunity to figure out, you know, how to do it on video. But every time I go to put something down on paper or put it on a video, you know, there's all that thought process that occurs ahead of time. And especially since I'm not an edit guy, you know, I gotta pretty much use the whiteboard and figure out kind of, you know, multitask in my head those things that I want to say and transmit on a video. And you know, I'll admit that sometimes on the videos I do, I go, that was too many words, or you know, that was you know, that was a tangential, you know, comment that didn't need to be said. So I'll redo it. But usually it's, you know, short and sweet. And I'm not the most patient guy, especially when it comes to watching video. So I've learned for myself that doing videos, if I was the one watching them, they need to be 3 to 6 minutes long tops. And so kind of, you know, chunks, you know, information bites, and do it and get it out there, and then, you know, move on to the next one and the next one. So that's why a lot of my videos are a little bit on the shorter side. I want to leave the, you know, the viewer with, you know, a couple lessons, maybe just one, maybe 2 or 3 kata in my lexicon in my school, but you know, short and sweet, and then they can, you know, watch however many they want. But it's really about trying to transmit the information so that they can go to their pal outside in the yard, or, you know, at their dojo, or, you know, using wiffle bats or whatever it is, to be able to, you know, have that video playing, you know, on their phone or their computer, and just, you know, try this stuff. And I always ask for comments or questions on my videos. I get very few of those, and that's you know, neither here nor there. It's you know, I try to.
It's pretty typical. I find that with video, the thing that's lacking from a coaching and teaching standpoint is that direct connection with the live person that's there, where you can watch their progress, you can adjust them and tweak them, offer them the input that they need. But with video, there's just this opaque wall that things go over one direction, but they don't come back the other way. And as a coach, or, you know, any teacher that's worked with people, it's frustrating. And because you like that feedback, it helps you be a better teacher and help you give the student what they're looking for. But when you send a la carte stuff out, you rarely get comment or feedback back. Yeah, it's tough. It's rough. It's not easy.
Yeah, and I was gonna say there's a couple of sides of that. There's the video for instruction, and then there's the live class thing, especially with the Zoom stuff, that, you know, when you're in class, you can read the room. You can look around, you can see that one person that like isn't grasping what you're talking about, and you can kind of come back to that, and all that. And you know, but when you're doing video for just straight instruction, I mean, you don't even have that. I mean, you're just talking into the void to some extent. And, you know, and, you know, Ike, like you were saying, you know, you start into it and you're like, no, I gotta totally scrap that, because like I'm droning on, and, you know, or, you know, you have to break it up into segments. You know, I finally put together my Pell work videos last year, which is something I've been talking about doing for a long time. And even with that, I mean, what is usually a 2-hour class, I broke up into like 10 different videos. And I don't know if you have yours structured in a kind of in a chronological order, or have you just kind of put them out as you had a concept come up and you made a video and put it out that way?
Yeah, so what I've done is I've categorized them to weapons forms. So sword and shield, long sword, polearm / Dane axe, couple katana ones, maybe 1 or 2 Florentine, and then a couple other categories. And actually, to me, it's one of the more important categories. And I don't even remember what I call it. It might be just Ike talking Zen, something like that. But it talks about, you know, why Pell work is important, how to do visualization, how to use mirrors to better understand what your opponent's seeing, you know, based on your guard and when you move and things like that. And a lot of philosophical conversations, again, short bites, but trying to pass on things like no mind, Mushin.
Yeah, exactly. That's the mind of the fighter is a hard thing to try and translate, through video. But I understand exactly what you're talking about. And so,
Yeah. So, the good part is, I don't know, since we put up the library, some of your stuff was the first stuff in the library. So you have probably 50, 75 videos through there. And the best part is you cover a lot of stuff other people don't cover, right? I mean, there's a million people out there with Sword and Shield, and you dive into so many other things for people. And I think it's a great place for people to go and find the other weapon styles and other ideas. And like you said, somebody even in the comments already said that they really like the shortness of them because, they can just burn right through it a little bit and then go out and try it, and that's, what I found was that was really nice. And I thought pretty much you've done a nice job also kind of categorizing stuff. You have a couple of different kind of learning threads going and you add stuff to each one of them as you're going along, like the kata series you have, and then you have like a dojo series and you have your longsword series. It's almost watching like 3, 4, 5 different channels, and I'm waiting for next week's. So it's a real big thanks out there. I thought it's a great way to present that. And I don't think, the piece is, I have a feeling it may seem simple for you, but it's really coming together. I thought for out of all the ones I've seen people put multiples together, yours literally has multiple channels and it comes together pretty well.
Great. Well, that's good to hear. To finish answering Sean's question, I also do my best to categorize the lessons numerically. So like when you go to my Sword and Shield kata, it's like, or the polearm, even better, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and they're numbered that way. So the beginning student, and really we're all beginning students, right? A little bit of Shoshin in there, right, Tristan?
Yep, the beginner's mind. Yep.
Beginner's mind, exactly. To go to that number 1 and say, well, what does Eikbrandr do? What's he teaching? For even the most advanced student, if you have a little bit of humility and a little bit of egolessness, you can go to that and go, okay, that's I'm not learning anything. But you might go, oh, that one word, I've never thought about that one word, or oh, what's with the stance, those kind of things. But it's numerical. So people are kind of, I ask people that, especially that are new, they can go, oh, never done polearm. Let's go to number 1.
Yeah, and when I did my Pelric series last year, I did the same thing. And like in every successive video, I made that statement. If you haven't watched the other videos, go back and start at the beginning because you don't want to jump right into how I throw the wrap if you don't understand what a basic stance is, and what you don't understand what I think a good telling blow looks like to begin with. Like don't jump in the middle of this. Like everything we do builds on the lesson before, and you can't come into the middle of that and expect you're just going to be able to do it.
And not to mention if you do, because you don't have those building blocks, not only you got to do it probably wrong, but you could hurt yourself too.
Yeah.
So,
Sooner or later, you're going to have to go back to lesson 1.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You can only avoid it for a while.
I mean, how many times does someone jump ahead and then they fuck up their elbow or something like that because they never actually learned the proper technique, right? And so, absolutely, that is huge to learn. To also set yourself aside and say, I can watch this thing. Maybe I can pick something new from any one of these videos. And so, it's just separate yourself from this and be willing to learn continuously.
Yeah, quick anecdotal story. I had a student, still a dear friend of mine, not in the SCA anymore. We worked together, and so I was training him. And tall, skinny guy. He and I were walking back from lunch at work one day some years ago, and he goes, my right elbow's hurting me. He'd been fighting about maybe a year. And I said, why is your elbow hurting you? He said, well, I was fighting. I did it fighting. What did you do fighting that hurt your elbow? Well, I threw some wrap shots. I said, I told you you're too new to throw wrap shots. We haven't gone over that other than very basic form. What are you doing? I told you not to do that because you get hurt. And
right.
He's like, well, this other night in the group was like, hey, you should start throwing rap shots. You're tall and long. You could get a lot of kills. I said, well, did you get kills? She's like, yeah. Was it worth it? No.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, that's one of those places. And in the end, really, we all end up going back to the beginning, right? I mean, that early form, we all end up going back there to perfect it. And that shows you how important that early form is, right?
Totally.
So
It's not sexy, and that's what people are drawn to, is the sexy.
There
I
you
want
are.
the sexy shot. I want the
yeah,
cool deal.
I want
And
the
then they
big
get
J
hurt,
hook.
or then they realize, well, why doesn't this work consistently? And it's like, okay, now we go back to square one. We build the house from the ground up.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly right, Tristan. You have to build a strong foundation of your fundamental skills.
Mhm.
And then all of the other things that we do, you can extrapolate out from that. But you can't do it if you don't have that strong foundation. And so I hammer on all the time. Remember to throw your blows perfectly, right? To work on this, because if you don't, it's going to cause problems at long run, and also physical problems too. So absolutely build that foundation, guys. I can tell you enough.
Well, and I don't know if you guys have also experienced the other side of this too. Like, you know, there was a point at which later in my career where I realized, you know, that there were a bunch of, you know, creative and like Tristan said, these sexy shots, you know, that are like all this stuff. And like there's so much of that I just don't do anymore. And you just kind of look back on it after a while, and you're like, I used to do that. And there were the things that were like really creative and really exciting and flashy, and now I just don't do them anymore. But at the same time, that was all part of my progression. That was part of my process, is to kind of have to go through that creativity and to kind of make things up for myself, and to kind of go through that. And you know, and yeah, I got some kills on them here and there, and you know, but eventually I'm like, why would I do that when I can just throw something that is basically one of the 5 basic shots that Brian taught me 35 years ago.
Yep.
I
Hey,
think
so we're going to jump into a couple of questions that everybody's used to liking to know. First is, when did you, it's the hard one. When did you start in the society?
I started approximately October 1984. And the date I remember officially was when I authorized first time ever Sword and Shield, April 9th, 1985. So
Nice.
after I think 9 practices, there was a winter break in there and stuff. But,
So how many?
Nine hole practices, or
yeah, 9 whole practices.
So how many years before you
back
got
in the
knighted?
What?
How many years before you got knighted?
Just under 5. So I was knighted in February 3rd, 1990. So it was I had not quite turned 26, and that was just under 5 years from authorization.
Awesome. And then you reigned.
I reigned in 2009. Was Penzik King at Penzik 38. And that was the first war, as some of you guys might remember. We did an official East Mid versus the known world war. It was only half of the war, and then we did the normal version, the other half of the war. So a lot of people remember the first time that happened was my son, Prince of Eric, the year after. But when he did it the whole year, but I did it first. And
Look, I'm going to throw some shade your way. And so why did it take you so long?
To get knighted?
No, to get knighted, 5 years ain't a long time to get knighted, mister.
Oh, to
No.
become yeah. So well, my second reign, by the way, was in 2012. But I believe there's a couple of significant reasons that took me that long. One of them was I was young enough when I got knighted that although I kept fighting and kept training, and you know, I'm a sword guy. I'm karmically a sword guy. You know, I'm not a gym rat. I hate working out, but unless it involves a sword or a katana or a boken or, you know, a Viking sword or whatever, right? But I had to learn some stuff about life that was, you know, more significant than just you know, swords and martial arts. And
Yep.
Yeah, I like that. Yep.
And then once I wanted to finally start fighting in, you know, my just before I was knighted, I got to the quarterfinals in the Crown tournament, and double killed twice with Master Einar Hawkinson up in Racine, Wisconsin. That was, let's say, 89. And that's when Duke Eikbrandr made me his King's champion. But, once I got knighted the next year, there was some life stuff, learn more about life, working 60 hours a day, working for my dad. So, the upside of, working for your dad, you have a job and you're never going to lose it, right? The downside is you work when he says, and you always get yelled at because, it's your dad.
Well, that's the equation, right? It's either money and no time, or no time and money.
Yeah.
It's a trade-off.
Yeah. And then once I got serious and found Runa, my wife, and we got married, there was at least, so that was 1999. There was like 3 or 4 years, both just before that and after we got married, that I was like, hey, can I fight for you in a crown? Can I fight for you this year? No. Ooh, and then I almost drove off the road one day, on Sunday. We were driving home from a crown tournament. I'd marshaled that or whatever, and I didn't ask the question about fighting anymore for her. And she said, well, how come you haven't brought up fighting for me like this time? I was like, well, after 5 years, 10 times, I figured it was a thing. And she's like, I think I'd like you to fight for me in crown. And I was like, breaks. Oh my God, what happened? Where's my wife?
Where's my wife?
So anyway, started on that path, and 3 or 4 years later, I had that finals crown tournament with the one Peter was king. Alistair, and I thought it was I was owning the field the whole time, and then I got into the finals, having never been into the finals of a crown, and I spooked, man. I was my brain just like went away. My fight intent was like, and so it was good that I didn't win, because I probably would have done okay, but I won when I was supposed to.
So how did you resolve that when you won crown? Was it just the fact you'd been there before, or was it the fact that you had everything in place and you knew it would be okay?
I think all those for sure. I think that I had some relatively potentially extraordinary things that happened to me in a positive way. I became the ward general for the Midrealm and won Pennsic 36, being ward general, working very closely with the crown, our royalty, king and prince, et cetera, and everyone in the known world. And then I went back to Pennsic 37 as general again, and won that war for my king. And so I was pretty relaxed and pretty cool on the front of, well, what's going on in a tournament? What's going on in a crown tournament? Well, it's all about relaxing and just fighting your fight, controlling it, doing what you need to do to defeat your opponent, one opponent at a time, right? And it's once you've been a war general and been successful at it, you've developed all those tools. And I tell you, fighting in a crown tournament is not nearly as nerve-wracking as talking to some of the extraordinary royal peers and extraordinary characters around the known world.
Wow, you put that very nicely.
Hey, wait, one of those guys could have been me.
No, that's probably how Thorfinn and him met. No,
actually, I met Ike in one of my favorite spots in the SCA is my friend's booth selling Viking jewelry. Happened to be one of those days. After every war that they're at, my friends Viking you like, and then they became they kind of split off and became Feed the Ravens and some other stuff. But I usually go there and hang out, right? And one day I go into the booth and there's this guy and his wife sitting there, and we start chopping it up. And it was like one of those things. I think it was an Australia war, actually. It was, so it wasn't Pennsic, actually. And I just thought, this guy is hella cool, right? And then like we ran into each other kind of that year a lot, and every time was a great conversation and stuff. And that was kind of how we became friends, was just kind of sitting around talking. and you had won 1 crown, I think, yeah, at that time.
And not.
No, you're right. And that's right. And we actually reigned at Pennsic together 2012, I think.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. And but I mean, we just became friends over just kind of like mutual liking of the SCA and kind of early migration era culture. So
Unique, awesome, eccentric, crazy Viking dudes. You know what I'm saying?
exactly right. And I was like, that I love that booth because I've met some amazing people there. It's like going to the Johnny Carson show in the SCA. You never know who you're gonna meet, and but it's always good, right? And so,
I love when Albin was always in the booth because he'd be like, "Hey, you want a beer?" And he'd get everybody jazzed on a couple beers. He loved the American IPAs that he couldn't get anything, and stories would start to flowing and the singing, and heck, guys like Thorfinn and I'd go into that tent, and other than speaking quietly, having fun, in the background, we were having fun listening to those crazy guys.
Oh, man, seriously, yeah. At that point, I'd known them for kind of a long time, and it was a place that was the place I had to go every event, right? And so, yeah. Anyway, that's how we met.
Hey, so another jumping back to kind of the fighting side. Who did you train under?
So I've actually trained under only one person really in the SCA. Others, of course, in other martial arts. But Duke Sir Laurel Darkspane has been my teacher and my sensei from that 1984, late 1984 timeframe. And I've enjoyed learning things from you, Brannos, of course, and other individuals across the known world. But Laurelin is my waypoint for my path and my understanding on how to move forward, and then also how to learn to multitask, and so you can have 20 kids you're training and know each one of their their lesson plans, because nobody writes stuff down like us guys. But yeah, Duke Laurelin. And then when I got into kendo and iaido in about 1995, 98, when I'd been a knight for 5-6 years, Master Tetsuo Higuchi, I was fortunate enough to start taking his classes, and specifically for the sword work, of course. I did, he's like, well, you're Dedo, you do judo. So I did the mat work and knot work. I can't remember the name of that art, but learned a lot from him. And I'm an avid reader of Japanese martial arts culture and Muto Musashi and stuff. So anyway, talk forever on that point.
Awesome. That's what we're supposed to be doing, talking about that. So go for it.
Yeah.
So at what point did you find yourself kind of becoming a trainer more than just what is expected of a knight? There was that point, I think, for all of us, where we kind of look back and we're like, I'm doing more than just the job. And as you know, being a trainer on this level is really, it's the best job in the world. So was there kind of a magic point at which you realized that you just kind of got all these people looking at you, I mean, in the same way that you look at Laurelin?
Well, yes, in regards to, my local group, I realized that I had to be the best trainer I could, for myself, because the path, we make is, diligent, hardworking warriors, is you eventually have to make your own path. And in so doing that, you become a knight, and then you take squires, and then that's responsibility to teach your squires and men at arms, et cetera, et cetera. I'm a pretty charismatic guy. I don't know what that's all about, but I get a lot of people that want to be in my household and whatnot. So I do a lot of training there. I've never really done any training of any significant regard at Pennsic or Estrella or anything like that. Brannos has got a laugh, and probably will Thorfinn and Tristan, but I'm kind of a private guy, and I feel like I'm a humble enough guy that I'm like, hey man, if people don't ask me to to teach them, that's cool. There's a bunch of other people that they can learn from, you know, unless they're my dependents. But definitely after I was knighted, that was the thing. It's my job to do that. I asked somebody, they said yes. I have to give them everything. The more they take, the more they get.
Yep. I mean, and that's a hard moment, actually, I think, for a lot of knights is, you know, they do get put on that spot where, and it's, you got a relationship, and sometimes they didn't even think it's like, oh, now I got a job. I have a real job, and I might not know my job very well yet.
Job with a
Right?
lot of requirements.
Uh-huh.
Many very vast and very different obligations that you have to hit. And it seems that everybody chooses kind of a set of those obligations to really go after, and then they sometimes leave other ones. And a lot of times teaching isn't one of the ones they put up there and really go after like crazy.
Yeah. Go ahead,
Thorfinn.
Thorfinn.
I think in the SC, culturally, we have kind of an idea that once you get knighted, you're supposed to pursue the idea of getting squires, right? You're almost kind of like, well, you don't have any squires. And I think that maybe that's bad in the sense that if you're not capable or willing to spend the time to teach them, don't bother going and doing that. It's so set that thing aside. It's like, stop thinking about the idea that I have to have squires to validate myself. And if you're not ready to be a teacher or a mentor, that's not the thing that you should be doing. And so I just think that maybe we've been told that, you know, like, why does this not have squires, right? And I think that that's something we should think about, is that maybe only do it when you have the energy and the kind of the time that you want to give forward to that person. If it's all about you at that point still, which is okay, then maybe not squires yet.
Well, I know as peers, we all have an obligation to share our knowledge and what we know. But I know all the squires that I've had started as relationships and ended up as squires. You know, and I know early on when I, you know, first started taking squires, as I was looking at, it's like, I don't want to be I don't want to be the kind of knight that has a big cheering section of squires that are there just to kind of cheer me on in a tournament. You know, you have to weigh how much you can, how much capacity you have to like divide your attention against all your other squires. And it's yeah, it is. I think Thorfinn's got a point that we kind of put a lot of emphasis on, you know, you have to have squires or whatever. But for me, you know, it starts as a relationship, and you know, and it goes from there.
Yeah, I think on that level though is, you know, mine started I had that same idea when I started, that it was that relationship, almost friendship, right? And then tell you the truth, after the first number of squires I took, I was like, you know what? It's not for me. I found that that's not what I needed. I needed a formal relationship, and it was still a relationship. I'm very good friends with all of my squires, but it was this is my job, this is your job, and this is how we're going to serve each other. You're going to serve me like I served the crown, so that you learn that as well. They have jobs. I'm a very big one on getting your squires jobs to do, because this is what I see a lot of, is a lot of us are really super independent, and we always like, oh, I don't make my squires to do nothing. It's not making your squires do anything, it's giving them a chance to do something. Right. A real relationship is two ways. Mm-hmm. So if you always are so independent, it's like, no, don't pack my bag. No, don't carry my bag. Well, what do they have left to do? Mm-hmm. So, you know, there's that place where you give them the things that they can do, because then they feel accomplished in their side of the relationship. And I found that worked for me much, much better.
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard to let them.
Yes, it's very hard. Believe me, I hate people packing my bag and taking it somewhere.
One thing I'll add into it that Brannos is probably not giving himself credit for, that he definitely should, is that how much he teaches people that are not his direct dependents. Mm-hmm. And this is something that I know was a big part of the SCA culture back in the 80s and 90s. It's not as much today, but I think it's one of those things where every person who has skill every night specifically obviously thinks about teaching his students or the people in his household or his men-at-arms or whatever the hell they want to call that relationship. But oftentimes going outside that to help somebody even for a few minutes, much less a half an hour or a day or a week or whatever, or help them even though there's not an official relationship, is a crucial part to learning and sharing our sport. And that the coaching that we're talking about doing since we started this whole thing is meant not only for the knight who wants to coach his squire or coach his man-at-arms, but also have somebody come over for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, or can you help me out? And being able to increase that mentorship, even though it's in smaller doses. And I think that's, I've heard a lot of unbelts or people that are starting out that will say, well, why would a knight ever share anything with me? I'm not his squire. I'm not his household. Obviously they've got some kind of secret knowledge that they'll only tell it inside people. This is, I think, a myth that kind of needs to get destroyed. And yeah, there are a couple of knights or a couple of royal peers out there that will say, well, no, I've got stuff that I won't teach anybody. But for every one of those guys, there's probably 100 knights that would happily show you every single thing that they do if you just want to sit there and listen to them. And if you ask them, they'll answer it. So, and Brannos to me is almost an avatar that way. Like he's never not shared, never not been very generous with anybody, doesn't matter who they are. And that's something that really enhances the SCA and it enhances fighting. So I want to throw that out there because it's easy to get into the squire discussion.
No, 100%. And I appreciate your words. And, there's no better feeling than to be able to help people. I live off of it, and you can see everybody here. Ike is shaking his head, and, and Duke, Sean, and everybody in here is shaking their head enough that the cameras are all over the place. But, it's I'm glad you bring that up because it's a truth. I mean, Eikbrandr, I know you absolutely love training.
Mm-hmm. Clearly do. It's kind of in my soul, whether I'm training a sword fighter or somebody how to do blacksmithing or making jewelry or, God forbid, geometry or something crazy like that. But it kind of feeds my soul, like you're saying, Brannos. It just, and Sean was nodding his head too. It's kind of what we have in us that it's a part of who we are, and we've taken that and run with it, and because it gives us that thing that that we need, and it's for me it's not an ego feed, right? People sometimes think it's like, oh, you're getting your ego fed, right? It goes past that. It's more on a spiritual level. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's not because I needed it. It's because by being there and paying, tithing to the church of rattan or steel by teaching, it gives all those other people an opportunity to become more of who they are and bigger and maybe better than who they are today. Because frankly, that's what I do. That's one of my adages, right? Is I always want to make sure that I'm a visionary, and a futurist. I'm always looking at, well, I'm here today, but I want to be here tomorrow, not only in fighting, but in how to teach better and how to do art better and how to communicate better, and all those things. And a lot of that is in my soul too. I just kind of fell into that, I think, in kind of who I am and the way of things. But I wanted to actually kind of redirect the conversation a teeny bit, but segue from the squire's conversation and teaching. One of the things that is one of those tasks that I find and have always found to be difficult to light is how to motivate your students, right? To do the drills that you give them. I'm constantly telling my students, okay, so we sparred and we were at the practice. We all had a good time. It was like the thing. It was the happening. It was the dance, and everybody loves that, right? But you want to get better, right? Well, of course I want to get better. okay, well, make sure this week, you go home and do, your 10 minutes or 15 minutes of footwork every other day, right? That's not a lot, right? At least not to me, do some Pell work every other day, in and amongst that. 10 or 15 minutes doesn't have to be a lot, think about fighting a little bit. And I guarantee that next week you got to come back, you got to be better. And when you're better, you get more cool new stuff from Eikbrandr because you've proven that your fundamentals for those skills have been obtained at least enough that it's in the Rolodex of skills. So it has now, I can use that as a connector to build to the next lesson, right? And it's so much easier to get students to do that who just have that in their way of being. I've had some students that it's like they did that, didn't even have to tell them I'd buy them beers or make them armor, right? But other students are, I just love to fight and let's fight more. I'm
Well, and also that thing you're talking about right there is there's also that indicator of how much effort they're willing to put out, right? you give them some work. If they go home and they do that work over that week, like we know, right? You can tell me that you're doing Pell work, but once you start swinging a stick, I'm gonna know, right? And when you have like for me, I really don't care how good a fighter is. I don't care how new they are or how bad they are, because we know that at whatever level you're at, you're not as good as you want to be. So my job is to get you better. I'm far more interested in how much work you're willing to put into this, and because we've all been there. You work with somebody, like, hey, can I help you with my stuff? You give them some advice. 6 months later, you're telling them the same thing over and over again. It gets old pretty fast. But those people that are putting that work into it, and the people that are like even week to week or even month to month, you see them at Estrella, and then maybe you see them at Penzic, 6 months later, and you see the amount of work that they do. That is intoxicating. And like, I want to throw more information at those people who are actually going to do something with it. And that's exciting to me. And that's the stuff that is like, oh, and the other side of that is, hey, if you legitimately worked on this and it didn't work for you, I will find something for you that will work, because I know that you're willing to put in the work. I don't have all the answers. We've been over this. I can't have all the answers, but I know the people who do. And if you're going to put this level of work into it, and what I give you just doesn't work, I'm going to find somebody that is going to be able to communicate with you. We're going to get you the information you need, because I know that level of work and that effort, that's really the exciting part. And that's really what makes somebody successful.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when you see other people put the effort in, it's hard not to get engaged.
Yeah.
They pull the best out of you. You get this excitement going. I mean, they don't even have to hit somebody as long as they threw a shot and you're like, that is the best shot I've ever seen them throw. You get that excitement, and then you're like, oh, we're gonna make sure now we're gonna fix that timing, and it's that kind of thing, and that's that piece where the student gives back, right? That's realistically, we already just said that we all love giving. Right. And we love helping people. And when you have a good student, that to me, that's the relationship. It's like they work hard, you work hard, and you build your next in peer. I am saying not SCA peer, but you build your next peer of your fighting peer. You that person that aligns with you and starts pushing you.
Yeah.
Right. Both of you are educating each other just in a different way. So hey, Tariq said there's beer. What? He hasn't got any of his beer yet.
He's my senior squire, and I love him to death. That's all I'm going to say on that count.
Hey, so we talk about this a little bit. Here's throwing that with. I kind of gave you a heads up on this one. Did you think about? Was there a light bulb moment for you?
Yeah, I'm going to look at my paper for that, because I wrote down some things. So one of the things that once I had learned a number of different weapon styles and forms, I started to realize that the weapon wasn't a sword or a pole arm or, you know, a rattan stick. It was me.
Yeah.
Is the person. And so the training that I strive for myself personally, and then to start to understand how to do that for my students, is making sure they understand that the lessons, the physical lessons, right, are you know, how to hold a weapon and where to hold it and how to, you know, make your blocks and your attacks and generate power and speed and all those things. But that's really the simple part if they do their drills and their pel work and their footwork and everything. The exciting part past that is that light bulb moment of, you know, how do you understand yourself and understand humility and how to empty your cup so you can learn, you know, from somebody else of skill and ability, and you know, how to understand how to utilize in your own head the understanding of the 4 poisons in kendo, which are fear, doubt, confusion, and surprise, right? You know, those things that are making you a better fighter on the field when you understand more of those things about yourself and then can adjust those things as you choose to. But more importantly, right, it means that when you're in the boardroom, you know, at corporate America, or talking to some crazy person on the phone, how to not lash out, get mad, use anger, or, you know, your physicality, but to just take a nice, you know, breath, you know, kind of center. Let them kind of drain their energy out while it's not affecting you, right? Because if it's affecting you, you want to punch them. Right? Mm-hmm. And then when their energy drains out, you have all the answers that are easily, you know, at your fingertips to control the situation and to diffuse any kind of, you know, situation, whether it's somebody who's gigantic on the list field and using 2 swords that are, you know, each a mile long, or Edmund, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Good reason for that, or like I said, you know, in the boardroom, or your boss, et cetera, et cetera. So that was a really big one.
I think that goes into that reduce that confusion, or you know, in your head. Let things settle. Don't let them stack, and you know, find that space of calmness, mm-hmm. where you don't have so many things in your head that you can't think of one of them. Right. And by giving yourself that space, it makes you able to react, and 100%, doesn't matter if it's on the field or in a boardroom. It gives you that space to figure out what's going on calmly and clearly, and then execute.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's funny how you mentioned the boardroom and how that plays into modern life as well. And you know, there's a reason that the Book of Five Rings is sold in the business management section of the bookstore. You know, back when we had bookstores back in the 2000s. But yeah, it was that's a book it's sold in business management. Yep. Because there's you know, that's a book that talks about how to defeat an opponent. Mm-hmm. And if you look at that from a meta scale, it's not, you know, it's not sword specific. It's like you were saying, it's the philosophy of it. I mean, yeah, you know, and you hit it perfectly. You know, you are not, you know, the thing in your hand is not the weapon. You know, there is no master weapon system.
You know, and the Book of Five Rings has actually had different translations and writings that were more focused on business strategists. And I know we're talking about having an episode coming up where we're talking about books, and I'm sure this one's going to get brought up.
Oh yeah.
But if you're looking at it from a practicing swordsmanship angle, be careful about which translation you get, because there are quite a few that are for business executives. And it's tough enough to interpret already without having language changed for a particular audience. So we'll get into that more when we cover it. But if you're scribbling down Book of Five Rings to go pick it up, be careful about which one you get. There's some that are better than others.
I've actually had the good fortune to take some classes on Niten Ichiru, which is Miyamoto Musashi's sword school, two sword school from a guy by the name of Kim Taylor up in Guelph, Ontario. And that goes back a number of years when I was specifically doing a lot of that Japanese stuff. But yeah, I love Gorin no Show's Book of Five Rings and all that. That's great stuff.
Yeah. Rather cryptic. Every time you read it, you find something new and different that wasn't there before. And in terms of meaning, yeah, it's from a rather grumpy guy in his 70s living in a cave writing a book. It's an impressive work. He didn't want to waste any words.
Right. One of my favorite pieces that I actually understood, second or third read. So, 2 or 3 years into being knight and continue to understand it better is very simply, he says, sight is weak, perception is strong. Right. So,
you stop seeing. You have to start seeing. How do I describe it last time? Stop looking and start seeing.
Yep.
I also there's a manuscript picture of him with both swords down, and it says, and I love this kind of ambiguous statement. It just says, in this position, Musashi is invulnerable. I just love that. You're done. There's nothing you can do. There's if he stands like this, you've already lost. So he's invulnerable.
Funny story. I had a friend of mine that actually tried to use that stance for a two-sword rather approach.
Yeah.
He said, I got my ass beat for months.
Yeah.
He said that I just couldn't make hide nor hair how you could have the points down. And, having seen a little bit of the Niten, it is very aggressive. Like that, you cannot wait for somebody to start approaching you. And I think that this is a reflection of Musashi's hyper aggressive or hyper assertive tactical approach. Because he has his swords down, he's not sitting there waiting.
Right.
He's actually like a taut bowstring ready to just get released. And that's not really in the artwork that you see of him standing there. It just looks like kind of a chubby guy standing there with swords hanging down next to him. But when you see the teaching and how it's expressed, you take control immediately of any situation.
Yeah, exactly. I think because he can spring forward from there.
Right.
Also, most opponents would have had one sword, and he was doing this weird two-sword thing. So he was known to do a block with the other sword, right? Or cut your arms off with the other sword. So
and as I understand it, he never used two swords in a one-on-one duel. He only ever used two swords when he was facing multiple people. That's what I read. I don't know if that's accurate.
I hadn't read that.
Yeah.
I thought he developed it to fight a guy who was a Yari spearman guy.
That's possible. I don't recall.
So, I mean,
the esoteric answer on why he developed it is because learning how to use two swords is twice as hard as learning how to use one sword, right?
Right.
So by forcing himself to develop that style that wasn't taught to him, even in the most basic or fundamental ways, he developed that for himself to teach himself the balance of both sides, left, right, top, bottom, spirit, physical, and all those things, and how to use that weapons form. Not necessarily, I would agree with Tristan, not necessarily for too much dueling, though he certainly could, and I think did, although my memory's not too tight on that. But more importantly, on how to continue his path of education by developing tools for himself to advance past where he was yesterday or a year ago. So that's my esoteric answer.
Sure.
Well, that's actually a great lead-in because, and I agree. We see people do this all the time. It's like they switch hands and fight with them. They go to other weapon styles. So it's not that they're bored. It's they're trying to push themselves farther. And I think that's the key. Everybody needs to understand that you will get bored sometimes, and sometimes you just have to burn through that boredom and just to drive perfection. Sometimes you just need to break away from it and look and say, I need something fresh to push me into a different way to think. Right? Because if you find that, then you learn to appreciate what you have, and then you can bring them together. Right? So not only physically, but mentally, you're developing two things. And you know, I think that's a great way to put it. And I guess on that point, we do have a question that talks about, you know, what have you been working on yourself to push that?
Myself, so the where I'm at with my personal training, beyond just the, you know, try to stay in shape for a 57-year-old guy, because there's more and more of that than ever before. But it's seeing past the understanding and seeing past that sight I was talking about. You know, the simple visual forms and the simple visual cues and those things, and seeing into the mind of my opponent, right? And understanding where they are based on their stance or position, the energy they're giving me or the intent that they're giving me, and how to use that to my advantage to control them through more intent and more energy and focus directed at them, or void to take it away and give them nothing. You know, how to create those situations in my head so that they're just not occurring in a fight randomly, you know, 2 to 5% of the time, right? I'd like it to be more like 4 to 8% of the time. But to do those kind of things. So I've got a lot of things on my mind that I've been doing and thinking about. And frankly, it's about controlling the world around me, and being the most gracious and kindest person in that regard as well, right? Because as you get better at controlling and manipulating, it's tantamount and absolutely, at least in my opinion, to also be the more kind and more gracious and more courteous. Because as you get better at those kind of skills, if you're a Sith Lord, you know, that stuff is got to get you what it gets those dudes in the movies. And I hate those dudes.
I love it.
Yeah.
You know, but I think you're right. And I think I kind of cover that with that, building that connection with your opponent. It's not all the physical cues that we worry so much about. It's literally building a connection with your opponent where you know what they're thinking, or you can see the way they're feeling, the emotion in their body and their emotion in themselves. If they're looking at they're being aggressive or passive, or all of those pieces. And it's the same way, like you know, maybe someone who's helping others, you know, a psychiatrist or whatever. These people they learn to read a person without even words. Right. They ask the words, and you can give them a bullshit answer, but they know exactly that it was all bullshit and what the real answer is. Right. And I think that's what we do. That's that next path where you find that. Right. You find that you just get out there and you know exactly that feeling, and then you tap into it, and it just flows between the two of you. It's interesting. I want to show you something when we get a chance to be back together, and I'll try to do it without being drunk first, but that'd be difficult with you. Anyway,
I'm drunk training. So,
but I did this exercise where we did a connection exercise. I did it with Felix actually, and I did it with Squire first, and he wasn't very happy, so he went over to Felix. So I made them follow me in that connection, right? So they're doing all the same movements I was doing, and then I'd stop and I'd look at them, and then I'd just look away, break the connection, and I'd walk right up to them.
Yeah, exactly. Wow.
They hate it when I do that shit over here.
And that's the void I'm talking about. You know, that kind of create that physical, non-physical energy kind of connection. And when you take that away, they fall into it.
Yes.
You got no clue what's going on, and now you can own them if you want.
Exactly. And that's 100%. That's exactly what's happening is you took something away from them. There's a couple of videos, and the place I got this was from another video where they're doing that slow hand punch thing. I forgot. Sibes in the room. You remember?
Is that Michael J. White?
Yeah, Michael J. White's one. In his second video he does to explain it, he's working with somebody. And every time he goes to throw something, he's like, here, he's like, bang.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he's throwing away that connection is what he's doing.
Gotcha.
And he doesn't even talk about that, but that's actually, I think, what is happening in that. And then I literally took that and I tried that here with people, and I'm like, it absolutely works.
Nice.
So.
Cool. I'll be writing notes when we're done here, Brannos.
I love that you brought it up. I think somebody has a question. I asked them to kind of clarify it a little bit. They wanted to tell the difference. I was like, okay, what difference of what? Between knowing when to double down or push for perfection, or to break away and try something different. So how do you know where are you before you're like, okay, I'm on this plateau. So, I know I'm going to be here. So I'm going to just double down, make sure I'm pushing myself physically and trying to be perfect in technique until I break out of this plateau, right? If I can't break out of the plateau, I'm going to make what I do better. Or it's time to set all that shit down and go grab something else.
So where I am with that, and what I do my best to teach is the energy and the focus that you need to have is, obviously very significant, and continue to strive towards that perfection, right? But when you get to a point, and we're lucky, right? We do non-mortal combat, and so when you get to the point when it doesn't matter win lose, right? When you get to the point when you're not having fun with fighting, in a style, hell, I remember having elbow problems, and I switched to Danax and it went away, right? I mean, but what I'm trying to say is that when you're not having fun fighting sword and shield, go to a different style. Yeah, you're going to lose more. Yeah, make sure you have enough armor on that you don't take a bunch of bruises that are going to suck, right? Be smart about it, but go fight another form. You're going to start having fun again. You're going to, create a new dance for yourself, with your opponent. And eventually that is going to, and we've talked a little bit about this, that's going to teach you enough about yourself and the new fighting form and how you're moving and why you have to move a lot more with Florentine or longsword than maybe, sword and shield, that, hey, now I know what was causing me that problem in sword and shield. I just wasn't moving left and right. I wasn't moving offline enough, right? Or whatever. Geez, that's an easy thing, right? So go to something else that gives you that positive energy, that positive joy, joie de vivre, right? Joie de combat, right? To get back into that good headspace. And maybe that's like doing something, because it's all about who you are, right? And we're all just a little different, right? We all live on that little island, that's just our little island with one palm tree and hopefully some water coming in every once in a while we can drink. That is who we are. So, some guys, I tell them, no, you got to go and do a new form, but only do it half the night. Have a lot of fun. Make sure you're not getting hurt because you don't have enough armor, but then go back to your sword and shield and do sword and shield, and have fun, and then be serious and have fun, and so it's understanding how you work and how your motivation and your psychological synapses work to really know enough about yourself. And that's where a good trainer and teacher can help if when people have those people close by or know who to ping on electronic stuff to ask. I mean, I love when people ping me and say, hey, this thing is driving me crazy, blah blah, what do you think I should do? It's like, we all got to have an answer, right? All of us who love to teach, and it might take a little bit of time on text or whatever, but it's what I do. So
yeah,
that's my answer.
Go ahead, Thorfinn.
So I think part of what you said really resonated with me was that to be okay with those losses. So as you go into this new form and this new style, you're going to have to then rely on the fundamentals that you learned, but then apply them to a new thing. So it's okay to have all of these losses again, right? Even if you switch, let's say, shield styles are vastly different, and so it allows you then to learn a lot, apply your fundamentals to that. But you have to learn, you have to be okay with the fact that this is a process, and you're going to have to adjust and learn everything again, which is going to, in the long run, make you into a better fighter. So every time you can apply one of these things to your style, you're becoming more multifaceted.
Yeah, and you never know when this is going to show up at the right time. So, for some of us have been at this for a while, we're better able to recognize a plateau, or more importantly, we're better able to stay out of the plateau to begin with, by changing things up. But after I had won a crown with the same shield I'd been fighting with for years, big 22 by 36 heater, just one crown, right? I'm doing pretty good for myself. Obviously this is something I should, keep working at this, right? I go out to a small shire in our area, and I pick up this little tiny, little pseudo buckler thing, and I'm fighting with the newer fighters, and I was amazed at how it drastically altered how I was seeing the fight. And it was one of those things that I didn't know I needed to change. And then I pick up this thing just to play around with it. That ended up fundamentally changing everything I know about fighting. I went from that and I fought with the 24-inch square for a couple of years after that, and then eventually went to the shield I use now, which is 22 by 30. But it fundamentally changed everything, and it was on a lark, totally on a whim. I'm like, sure, I'll pick up this thing. I'll play with the juniors, and I'm like, holy cow! And it just, you don't know when you're going to have that moment where it just, as much as you think and perhaps especially if you think pick up something else, and it could vastly alter everything you know about fighting.
Satori.
I think Tristan, go ahead.
Yeah. We had another question, and what I wanted to offer to this previous question actually lands squarely to answer this other viewer question, and that is that have you guys ever encountered or still encounter areas where you have to work from the ground up again, like go back to square one? And how do you humble yourselves to push through that? This relates to me, how you guys are talking about the plateau and the cross-pollination thing. My first love in the SAA when I first started was two-handed sword, because I came from that. I was kind of a Japanophile. I like the whole katana thing, really into it, and learned, boy, is that a harsh mistress. You will get ripped apart. You get hit on the shoulders, on the forearms, the whole deal. And I went from there, I really got a passion for polearm. Now at the time, and this was back in the 80s, the Midrealm Crown Tournament shield size was 26-inch maximum. I'm 6'4". I might as well just have a buckler. I was just tired of getting my legs ripped out, and I just said, screw this. I'm taking a polearm, or I'm going to fight two-sword. Because that two-sword was kind of a thing at the time in the Midrealm because of that. A lot of the tall fighters just said, screw this small shield crap. I'm going to take another sword and be done with it. I got knighted. I didn't even own a shield.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, okay, I'm a knight. Better know how to fight with a shield. So literally, I picked up shield fighting after I was knighted, and like, I've always hated this damn thing. It sucks. Granted, by that point, they'd changed the shield standards, so if you can stand over it, you could use it. So there was a little bit more rational size comparison to the size of the fighter. But it still was, I hated it. I got behind it, and something happened in my brain where I planted my feet, because I said, I'm behind this bunker, right? My footwork sucked. It was horrible. And I just got more and more frustrated. And this was going back to square one. And then one day, and unfortunately I didn't have a mentor or somebody who was senior to me that was working with me and able to give me ideas. I had to do this all myself. And one day I just said, why don't I use the same footwork I use for polearm for sword and shield? Because with a polearm, you got to move your feet. You cannot just stand there and exchange blows. And the same thing with two sword. It's like, why don't I try just moving around as much as, and suddenly my sword and shield became not so frustrating. It became a form that was understandable. Now, this is probably going to sound like you're an idiot. Like nowadays, anybody knows that. Well, this was back in the 90s, you know, and I was having to figure this out myself, but literally that was a light bulb moment. So yes, I had to go back to square one. And believe me, learning sword and shield as a knight, when you're expected to know all of it, everything about fighting, that puts a lot of pressure on. And I felt like I don't have 2 years to figure this out. I've got to get on this and be able to not just be able to do it, but be able to teach it. And so I felt like I had a fire lit under my ass to do it, and get on with it. So, and I grew to love it. I really grew to love sword and shield fighting, but it was changing my mind from thinking I'm behind this bunker and I'm protected to, all right, now I'm going to fight like I don't have any protection. And that was a big change.
Okay.
Thorfinn, you want to ask that next question?
I wasn't ready for it, so
I know, totally throwing you under the bus.
Okay, so it says, do you feel it's necessary to be a master of different weapon styles? And I think that for me, that's yes. I think that what ends up happening is that through the process of learning, you can become adept at different weapon styles. And I think that a knight should be. I think a knight should be a good warrior, like on the field as well as the tournament field. And so that's a different set of weapon skills and also techniques. I think that spear is very different, but also fundamentally the same as everything else we do. So the power generation, all of those things, you can how do I describe it? You can have that. Once you have that foundation, you can then use that to apply to any form. But I do think that we should become, or at least try to become, someone who is adequate fighting at any weapons form. I started off with a side strapped heater, right? And it was a much larger style at the time. As we went forward, it became kind of this ego contest to see, of my peers anyway, who could have the smallest heater and still be successful, right? So we got to where my squire brother actually had a heater that was his elbow stuck out, right? I mean, like it was that small, right? And he was fighting tournament.
The Havek heater.
Yeah, well, Vex was even smaller. And by the way, thanks for pointing that out. I did lose that crown, finals again. Stupid fucking thing. I thought I got this squared away, guys, and then no, I did not actually have that. But then what I'm talking about is that from there we then pushed ourselves into other forms, right? So I then went to a center grip round shield, and that was a drastically different style. And like when I talked about the idea that it was okay to lose earlier, what happened was no one in the West did center grip round shield. There was not a single fighter. So I was like trying to figure this out on my own. And I said, my persona, I'm going to use like air quotes, persona would have had one of these. So I should probably do this. Right. And I said, if I never win again, I'm okay with that. But that's also part of coming to grips with yourself. Right. You have to say to yourself, I've achieved what I need to do, and I'm ready to just be okay with exploring other types of fighting. And that's a huge step forward in everything we do. Is if you can then separate yourself out and say, like, I am the student again. Right. I've already won crown. And now I can then learn a new technique, right? And then apply that to my stuff. But what ended up happening is all of the other stuff that wasn't really working anymore because of that falls away and becomes like defined, or like maybe distilled is maybe the term I want to say. So you really end up focusing, and every time you add one of these elements to your fighting style, it allows you to have that happen. So yeah, I think that there is a necessary element for us to learn to use these other weapons, but by applying what we talked about earlier, the learning of the fundamental skills and movement and things like that, that allows you then to use that with this new weapon form. Okay, so I feel like I was not I was called out there by the teacher. But
let's throw this over to Ike and see what he has too. I have a feeling it's pretty close to it.
Yeah, I would like to add that. So we talk about the inner mind and how you motivate, and I think the question was when you get to the point where you don't want to do anything more, how do you have the humility to do more, or to go into more weapon styles, or do you have to do all the weapon styles, right? And the short answer to that is no, you don't have to, but having the ability to continue to enjoy, most of us have been fighting for, and this is just SCA, this isn't all the stuff in between all the SCA, right? But like 30 plus years, I think, for most of us, but more for some of us. And the way we do that is we learn to empty our cup, right? An empty cup is different than humility. Okay. It's similar. They're certainly connected, but let's empty my cup and go, all right, well, I want to learn, I want to read a new book. I've never read mysteries, right? That might be interesting. I don't know, right? Let's read mysteries, or, oh, wait a minute. I love watching, Ike and Thorfinn do Danax or whatever, right? So I'm going to try Danax, right? And, or Round Shield, center grip Round Shield, whatever the case is. And it's the lesson and the ego lesson, and then the humility that falls into having the ability to empty your cup and say, I'm going to try something new, and not have any prejudgments that I put into that cup, right? Because that's super important, right? Okay, Duke Thorfinn's here, and he said he'd teach me center grip Round. Okay, I've never done that. I'm going to tell him I've never done that, and I'm going to let him just fill my cup for me. Right? That's freaking awesome. And you get to meet Thorfinn and become friends with him. Well, how fucking cool is that? Oh, sorry. But
that's all right.
Anyway.
I say fuck all the time. They don't like it.
But it's about striving to the new thing, and then learning about yourself, through that striving to the new thing, right? And this kind of segues real quick into something that I wanted to talk about, which is Sean mentioned earlier about plateaus and understanding plateaus and trying to avoid them and how to see them coming and all that stuff. And that can be really hard lessons for people. But I'm not going to get into the plateau thing, but what I am going to describe is that most people think if you get knighted, you've hit the summit. Man, Laurelyn used to tell me, and this is so true, once you get knighted, you just have gotten to the point where now you're at a place where you can start to learn stuff, right? And then the next plateau, is for me was being general of the army. For a lot of us, it was winning crowns, right? But even though all of us have won crowns, well, what are we doing on a Friday night? Today we're talking about fighting because the summit. Man, I mean, I can't even see it. It's in a cloud up there somewhere, right? There's, and I know I'll never get there, right? And that's, I'm okay with that, right? So it's the striving, but it's also taking care of yourself physically, right? So when, like in my career, when I've hurt myself for whatever various reason, right? Messed up my knee when I was, I don't know, before I was knighted. So I had to learn how to not move so much, right? Tristan's like, oh, I got to move, right? It's like, me too. But when you hurt your knee and you still want to fight, okay, I got to get better at defense with my shield. And so that was because the only thing worse than potentially hurting my knee more was not fighting, right? For me. So, you
The
know,
emotional pain.
yeah. I mean, just I'll change my style and change who I am and grow to get to that next step, whatever that happens to be, right? And I'm not going to judge. It has to be, you know, that thing on that marker on that wall. It could be this thing over here I never expected. But for me, being more and more of a hippie, that's awesome. That's what's like, that's even better because I didn't expect it. Yay, you know. It doesn't mean I'm not going to keep redirecting to the thing I need to do. Anyway, that's
no, that's all real. I mean, I think we all find ways to keep doing what we love, right? And I think that's one of the best parts. So we're running about 5 more minutes here. Anything else you'd like to say before?
Yeah, Brannos. Oh, hey, Brannos, I was going to kind of wrap up, kind of connect all those dots a little bit.
Oh, go ahead.
Because there's several of these questions, and a lot of this is kind of all it's all related, right?
Yeah.
You know, regarding making changes to your fighting and various different weapon systems and all this. You know, a knight should be able to pick up anything and use it. You know, here's your shrimp fork in your old shoe. Now go win crown with that. We should be able to just pick anything up. But you know, one of the things about getting into different weapon systems, you know, like a lot of the stuff that we talk about on the Coach's Corner is pretty generic, honestly. I mean, people think that we're all mostly sword and shield fighters, but if you listen to a lot of what we're talking about, these are all generic concepts. And you know, the question about, you know, do you find mastery in one or do you find mastery in all? I think you need to have a certain level of proficiency in one because there's a foundation that gets set there that then is easier to pick up the other things, right? But when you're trying to learn everything all at once, if you go to practice and you do the Florentine and then you do the sword and board and then you do the glaive and you never learn any one of those to begin with. But once you have some sort of proficiency in the one thing, branching out into the other weapon systems, and this is true of weapon systems, and this is true of fighting styles and fighting people across the known world. The more you are exposed to the differences, the more you understand the commonalities. And that's a pretty huge key about this. Why do we go to Penzik to fight people that we've never fought before? Because it's different, not better. It's different. And when you understand what those differences are, you begin to start seeing the things that are the same. And as Thorfinn said, you get to distill down to the truth of what we do, but it takes that level of exposure. You have to experience so much of what there is, and there is an endless supply of really, really great fighters across the known world to get that from. And there's an endless supply of weapon systems, honestly. I mean, you know, you're pretty good at the sword and board. Like, what's your fourth best weapon system? Like, pick that up and go to crown with that and see how it goes. And then figure out range is range and targeting is targeting, and you know, and recovery is recovery. It's just with different weapon systems. Get exposed to all of it so you can understand what is the same about fighting.
If I remember right, wasn't it? I think Musashi said, "In 1,000 things, know one thing, and in one thing, know 1,000 things." Maybe it wasn't Musashi; it was definitely a Japanese source, and it's same kind of a deal. And they weren't just referring to sword versus spear; they were talking about sword versus carpentry versus, you know, learning making tea or anything. You'll learn the fundamentals of quality, and that's usually attention to detail. And the detail, as we know, the devil's in the details.
Yep. All right. So, Ike, did you want to, like, we kind of covered a bunch of stuff. You have anything else you want to kind of wrap up with?
Sure. I would like to say to everybody, you know, watching today that make sure you keep fighting fun. Make sure you understand your pain levels and thresholds. Don't ever push past it. You know, my pain numbers are 1 to 10. So when my elbow hurts a little bit, it's in a 2. I'll slow down and not get past a 3 or 4. But if, you know, I know a lot of people who their threshold numbers are 1 to 3, right? 1 doesn't really hurt, 2 doesn't really hurt, 3 my elbow almost fell off my arm, right? So understand your pain and you know, abide by it. You know, take care of yourselves. Do your drills. Drilling is very important. Off sparring. You want to get better faster. You got to do the work. It is in the details, as Tristan said, and the hard work and the diligent work. But most important, keep it fun. I haven't been in the SCA for this many years just because it's swords, and martial activity. And certainly that's a huge part of it. But it's about all the cool ass people, that I meet across all the different communities and across all the other, areas of the SCA. Not just fighting, but all those fun and interesting individuals that I've had the opportunity to meet, and look forward to meeting new people and new acquaintances in the future. I'd also like to finally say thank you to Brannos and Tristan and Thorfinn and Sean, all you guys for inviting me to have a moment in the spotlight, and I've really enjoyed myself, and look forward to helping out in the future even more in my own way and however I might. And the fun is in the doing it together and being on the same bus, driving in the same direction, right, guys?
Hell yeah.
It's been great having you on, Ike. Thanks very much
Yeah,
for
it's been
coming.
great having you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
For everybody else, anybody else have anything they'd like to kind of finalize with? I'm going to just kind of wrap up the show. I'm going to show some of Ike's, all the Ike's content in our library. And anybody have anything they want to say?
No, go ahead with it.
All right.
Okay.
So for everybody else, we updated the library a good bit this week, added about 80 more links to videos out there, training videos, some great spear stuff. Ike had a bunch more stuff. I think we added quite a bit of spear stuff this week, in fact. We're trying to fill in a lot of these different weapon styles and things like that. If you, again, know other, have other stuff you like watching that think other people would, go ahead and send that to us, or drop it either in SCA Coach's Corner, or the document itself, or the library itself on the top right-hand corner, I believe has a link. That's a context submission form. But let me pop over to the library here and share that. And I shouldn't have so many open windows because it makes it easier. All right. So here we are, hopefully sharing my library.
Yeah, you're sharing it.
All right, good, because it doesn't show up on mine. So you can see here, I'm going to go ahead and swing over to Coach's here, and let's see if we can find his grace. Here he is. So to give you a feel of all of his stuff out there, I mean, you can see he's hoarding all of the spaces in this library. But he has some great stuff. I mean, lots of longsword stuff, lots of some Aikido stuff, and everything from movement to how to think about a fight. Really go look up his stuff, and if you have questions, like he said, he's happy to answer them. In fact, sometimes it's really nice to get questions from people, because that means that something kind of tapped in with them, and they want help, and they want to understand it better, and us explaining it actually helps that. And again, you can go in here and look at forms. So if we went into spear here, you notice that we just added a bunch of spear stuff that I just posted up last couple of weeks. So we're trying to keep up on everybody's pages so that we can keep stuff out here in one space. So hopefully you guys like it. Let me get out of sharing this. I'm not 100%. There we are. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. We got a lot of positive feedback. We're going to keep growing it. I got a couple other people I know that I really want to get their content out here. I like reaching out to people and asking first. So I would thank everybody who allowed us to put the content here, because you guys are the ones that people they really like this because your stuff's here. So Eikbrandr, thanks for all that content. You were a big part of the first rollout.
Welcome.
Other than that, it's awesome to see you and actually get to talk for more than 10-15 minutes with IMs back and forth.
That's
so It's going to be even better to share a beer, and hopefully we can have our buddy LeBref there with us when we do.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Guys, a great episode again. Thank you. I love listening to you guys. I loved all the martial arts stuff there. I stay quiet because I have a lot of martial arts background, but you guys have all of the insight on the Japanese stuff. It's amazing. I really enjoy listening to that. So unfortunately, Vester can't join us for the wrap up. First, I'd like to thank everybody out there for sure for coming to the show and watching. So we look forward to another show next week. Sean, I think we have
Elephant in the room.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the elephant in
According
the
to
room
our list.
conversation.
Yeah, and we're going to try to wrap kind of the last one we had was, how do we take care of problem children, right? Cheaters essentially. And we actually got contacted by a couple of people that also had some insight on that we'd like to bring on. We're going to bring on Valharic again. He did a great job. He has a lot of background in it. Duke Ronald had some really good thoughts he talked to me about, and I'd really like to have him share those with you. So looking forward to that episode. Bring the questions though. Elephant in the room's the time to throw stuff out and see who answers it, because you know a lot of times people don't want to answer stuff, but the good part is that the guys here, they'll answer. I know all of those guys will answer. So
Let us know if you got something that you think is delicate but you want to know the answer to it. That's kind of the purpose of the elephant in the room, is to get you the knowledge and understanding, and not let people be frustrated and being confused.
exactly. All right. So if you have any other lingering questions, head on over to the Coach's Corner, where we'll try to answer the questions you have. The good part is we have tons of other people that participate out there, not just us, that have some great answers. Sometimes I'm like, oh, they covered everything and better. I learned something. So throw it out there. I love seeing questions out there, and I really like seeing how people answer them a lot of times. Sometimes they're answered with videos. Tristan just posted up a great video on some training stuff. That got a lot of good training stuff in there, by the way, and so specifically around that was specifically around kettlebell, not kettlebells,
Indian clubs.
Indian clubs, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So that was a very good one. So let's see. So always happy to give back. Until the next show, everyone have a great week. We'll see you all next. Enjoy that one. Please be safe. We look forward to having you all back again.
Have a great weekend.
Thanks,
Have a good
guys.
weekend,
Thanks, Eikbrandr.
Thanks, Mike.
Guys.